Hello, my dear listeners. Welcome to another story here on Fio de Esperanza. Today, I'm going to tell you a story that will deeply move your hearts. It's the story of Leah, a young woman of just 20, who is pure and full of kindness. One cold night, she finds something that would change her life forever. 2 abandoned twin babies. What she didn't know was that this act of pure love would catch the attention of Ethan, a powerful millionaire who was desperately searching for those children. When he finally finds her, the proposal he makes is so unexpected, it leaves Leah speechless. Can the kindness of a pure heart transform even the coldest man? And what happens when 2 completely different worlds meet through the love for 2 small lives? Before we begin, I want to thank each of you who follows our channel, who comments, and who shares our stories with friends and family. You are the reason I'm here every day, bringing these stories that touch the soul. And if you're not yet part of our family, subscribe to the channel now and hit the bell to not miss any of the upcoming stories. And now, tell me in the comments, what do you do while listening to our stories? Are you working, doing something at home, or maybe relaxing before bed? I'm so curious to know how you enjoy these special moments we spend together. Well, now that we're all here, let's begin today's story, A Heart of Gold. It was a Tuesday morning in Springfield when Leah arrived at the small bookstore, Heartfelt Pages, in the center of town. At 20, she had a special way of being that made anyone feel welcome. Her brown hair was tied in a simple ponytail, and her eyes sparkled with a purity that was hard to find. Since she started working there 2 years ago, she had transformed that place into much more than a simple bookstore. It was as if each book came to life when it passed through her hands, and each customer left not just with a purchase, but with a lighter heart and a genuine smile on their face. Leah had this natural gift for making people feel special, even in the simplest gestures of everyday life. On that quiet morning, she was organizing the romance novels on the front shelves, the ones that always sparked the most curiosity in customers. She had a special affection for these love stories, even though she had never experienced a great passion in real life. Her existence was simple and organized, but she carried an unwavering faith in her heart that one day she would find her true love, the kind that makes your heart race and that you only see in movies or read in books. As she arranged each book in its proper place, she murmured synopses she already knew by heart. "This one always makes me cry," she thought, holding a novel about a couple who overcomes all difficulties to be together. This was exactly how Leah saw life, full of magical possibilities waiting for the right moment to happen, full of good surprises, saved by destiny. The doorbell chimed softly, and Ms. Miller entered with her usual warm smile. She was a silver-haired lady who came religiously every Tuesday, and Leah was already waiting for her with that genuine joy that sprang from her heart. "Good morning, my dear. How is our book girl today?" the lady asked, walking toward the counter where Leah had left some new releases. "Good morning, Ms. Miller. I'm great, thank you. And how was your weekend?" Leah replied, already heading to the shelf where she had set aside the book the customer was waiting for. "Look at that. It arrived yesterday afternoon, just like you asked." The conversation between them flowed naturally, as if they were old friends. Ms. Miller always commented to her neighbors about how that girl had a heart of pure gold, and how rare it was to find someone so genuine these days. After Ms. Miller left, carrying her new book and a cup of warm tea that Leah always offered, the morning continued at its cozy, pleasant pace. The bookstore wasn't a large space, but it had a unique atmosphere that invited people to stay longer, browse books, talking softly, or simply enjoying the peace of that special corner. Leah always had instrumental music playing softly in the background, creating a perfect environment for those who wanted to disconnect from the hustle and bustle outside. She herself took advantage of the breaks between customers to read passages from the books that sparked her curiosity the most, always with that thirst to discover new stories and be moved by characters who seemed to leap from the pages. In these moments of reading, she traveled to distant worlds and daydreamed, imagining what it would be like to live those romantic adventures that so enchanted her. The apartment where Leah lived was just 3 blocks from the bookstore, on a quiet, tree-lined street that she chose specifically for its tranquility. It was a small space with a cozy bedroom, a living room that shared space with the kitchen, and a simple bathroom. But she had managed to transform those few square meters into a real home. Every corner had been thoughtfully decorated, potted plants in the windows bringing life to the room, colorful cushions scattered on the sofa, photographs of happy moments on the walls, and shelves full of books she had collected since she was a teenager. Money was always tight, but Leah knew how to work miracles with the salary she earned at the bookstore. Her life was simple and disciplined, and she felt deeply grateful to have built this independence after being orphaned at 16. Living alone from such a young age wasn't easy, but she had an inner strength that came from somewhere deep in her soul, a faith that sustained her in difficult times. During the afternoon, as she attended to the few customers who came in, Leah would find herself thinking about the mysteries of life. Sometimes, when she was reorganizing a shelf or preparing a special tea for a visitor, she would feel a strange sensation in her chest, as if something important was about to happen. It was an intuition she couldn't explain in words, but it made her smile to herself and look to the future with even more hope. Maybe it was her naturally optimistic nature, or maybe there really was some special force that some people can feel before big changes. What Leah couldn't even imagine was that her life would very soon take a completely different turn, and that the pure kindness of her heart would be exactly the key that would open the doors to a transformation she couldn't have predicted even in her wildest dreams. The end of the afternoon brought a special calm to the bookstore, that moment when the golden light of the sun streamed through the windows and created an almost magical atmosphere among the bookshelves. Leah took the opportunity to do what she loved most, sitting behind the counter with a book in her hands and getting completely lost in the story. Today, she had chosen a romance about a young woman who finds love when she least expects it, and each page made her sigh with emotion. "One day it will be my turn," she murmured softly, imagining what it would be like to have someone look at her with that true, deep love that only exists in the most beautiful stories. It was a dream she had carried in her heart since she was a little girl, fueled by every romance novel she read and every movie she watched. When it was time to close the bookstore, Leah followed her usual routine. She organized the books that had been handled during the day, checked that all the plants were well watered, carefully turned off the lights, and locked the door. Walking down the streets of Springfield toward her apartment, she greeted the shopkeepers she knew, always with that sincere smile that was her trademark. The baker on the corner, the owner of the flower shop, the man who sold newspapers. Everyone had a special affection for that girl who spread kindness wherever she went. It was as if Leah had the power to brighten people's days just by being herself, just by sharing the light that shone within her pure heart. At home, after a relaxing bath and a simple dinner, Leah settled on the sofa with another book, wrapped in a warm blanket that Ms. Miller had given her for Christmas. It was her most special time of day, when she could completely disconnect from the outside world and travel through the pages to distant places and exciting stories. On that night, as she read about destinies that cross in unexpected ways, She had no idea that her own life was about to take a turn that even the most fertile imagination couldn't invent. The universe was preparing a surprise that would change everything, and the kindness she carried in her heart would be exactly what would attract this magical transformation into her life. An unexpected discovery. It was a Thursday night, and Leah was closing the bookstore later than usual. She had spent the entire afternoon organizing a new shipment of books that had arrived, and before she knew it, it was almost 9 o'clock. The streets of downtown Springfield were emptier at that hour, with only a few hurried people heading home after a long day of work. The cold July wind bit at her face, and Leah pulled her coat closer to her body as she locked the bookstore door. "It's cold," she murmured, breathing out and seeing a small cloud form in the frigid air. She loved winter, but on that night, the cold seemed more intense than usual, the kind that penetrates your bones and makes you want to run home for a warm blanket. As she was putting the keys in her purse, a strange sound caught her attention. It was like a low whimper, almost imperceptible, mixed with the sound of the wind rustling the leaves on the trees. Leah stopped for a moment, listening, but the sound seemed to stop. "Must have been my imagination," she thought, and started walking toward her house. But after a few steps, the noise came back, now clearer and more defined. It was, unequivocally, a baby's cry, or maybe even more than one. Her heart raced, and she felt a mixture of concern and urgency take over her entire being. Without thinking twice, she turned back and began to search for where that desperate sound was coming from, cutting through the cold night. The crying seemed to come from a small alley next to the bookstore, a narrow space between two buildings where people usually didn't go, especially at night. Leah took out her cell phone and turned on the flashlight, illuminating the path as she cautiously approached. "Hello, is anyone there?" she asked loudly, but she only got the crying in response, which was now louder and more distressing. When she got closer, she saw something that made her heart almost stop. A large cardboard box, the kind for appliances, was leaning against the wall, and the desperate sound was coming from inside it. Her hands trembling, she didn't know if it was from the cold or the emotion. Leah crouched down and carefully opened the box. What she saw left her speechless, and with her eyes full of tears. Inside the box, wrapped in blankets that were no longer enough to protect them from the biting cold, were two babies. They were twins, she realized immediately, with red faces from crying so much, and little cold hands that moved desperately, looking for warmth and comfort. They couldn't have been more than a few months old, and were clearly hungry. Very scared. "Oh my God," Leah whispered, feeling a mixture of horror and compassion take over her entire being. How could someone do something like this to such small children? Without wasting time, she took off her coat and wrapped it around the two babies, feeling how cold their little bodies were and how they calmed down a bit when they felt the human warmth. It was as if they instinctively knew they were finally safe. Leah looked around, searching for an adult, an explanation, a clue as to what had happened there. But the alley was completely empty, and there was no sign of who could have left those children abandoned on such a cold night. "I can't leave you here," she said softly to the babies, who were now crying more quietly, as if they understood that someone had finally come to help them. Her maternal instinct, which she didn't even know existed so strongly, fully awakened. Without thinking about anything else, she carefully picked up the box and began walking quickly toward her apartment. The walk home had never seemed so long. Leah practically ran the 3 blocks, carrying the box with as much care as possible, whispering words of comfort to the babies who continued to whimper softly. "It's okay, my little ones. We're almost at a warm place," she repeated, feeling how her heart was racing with anxiety and concern. When she finally reached her building, she went up the stairs 2 steps at a time, opened the apartment door, and ran straight to the bedroom. She put the box on the bed and turned on all the lights, finally able to see the babies' faces clearly. They were absolutely adorable, even with their red faces from crying so much. They had soft, dark hair, little eyes that couldn't focus properly yet, and small, delicate features that completely melted Leah's heart. "You are so beautiful," she whispered, picking up one of the babies and feeling how he immediately snuggled against her chest, looking for warmth. The feeling was indescribable. It was as if a part of her, that she never knew existed, had suddenly awakened. That urgent need to protect, to care for, to do everything possible to ensure that those small beings were safe and comfortable. The first thing Leah did was warm up some milk. She didn't have baby bottles at home, of course, but she improvised with a small spoon, giving drops of warm milk to each baby's mouth. They sucked desperately, clearly very hungry, and she felt immense joy seeing that she could feed them, even precariously. Then, she improvised diapers with some clean towels she had at home, changed their wet clothes for her shirts that were huge on them, but at least they were clean and dry. Throughout the night, she didn't sleep for even 5 minutes, caring for the 2 babies, feeding them when they cried from hunger, rocking them when they seemed scared, and simply observing the angelic faces that slept peacefully for the first time since they had been abandoned. The responsibility of love. When the morning sun came through the apartment windows, Leah was sitting on the bed with the 2 babies in her arms, one on each side, watching them sleep peacefully after a night that had completely changed her life. She hadn't slept for a single minute, but she felt strangely energized, as if the love that had sprouted in her heart during those hours was enough to sustain her. Their little faces were serene now, breathing softly, and she couldn't stop admiring every detail of them. How could someone abandon such precious things, she thought, feeling a mixture of sadness and indignation for whoever had been capable of leaving those angels on a cold night, alone and helpless. But at the same time, she felt immense gratitude for having been the one to find them, for having been chosen by destiny to save them. During the morning, Leah called the bookstore and said she couldn't come to work that day. Ms. Adams, the owner, was worried because Leah never missed work, but when she explained the situation, the lady was shocked and, at the same time, admired the young woman's attitude. "You did the right thing, my dear. Those babies need you now," Ms. Adams said with an emotional voice. "Take all the time you need to resolve this situation." Leah thanked her with a heart full of gratitude, knowing she could count on her boss's understanding. After hanging up, she looked at the babies who were starting to stir, a sign they would wake up soon, and felt a huge responsibility weighing on her shoulders. She had no idea how to care for babies, but she was determined to learn everything that was necessary. The first thing she did was run to the nearest pharmacy to buy the essentials: baby bottles, disposable diapers, appropriate powdered milk, diaper rash cream, and everything else the pharmacist recommended when she heard about the situation. The money she had saved for the month's groceries was all gone in one morning, but she didn't care at all. "You can always get more money, but these little ones' lives are priceless," she murmured to herself as she returned home laden with bags. When she arrived, she found the 2 babies awake and crying, clearly hungry and in need of care. Her heart ached when she heard the desperate crying, and she rushed to prepare the baby bottles, carefully following the instructions on the powdered milk container. Feeding the 2 at the same time was a challenge she never imagined she would face. Leah had to learn by doing how to hold a bottle in each hand, how to position the babies on her lap so they would be comfortable, how to tell when they were satisfied or when they needed to be burped. It was a delicate and tiring dance, but every time she saw the little ones' relaxed faces after a feeding, she felt a deep satisfaction she had never experienced before. "You two are so greedy," she would say affectionately, wiping the corners of their mouths with a soft cloth. It was incredible how in less than 24 hours, she already felt completely connected to those beings she didn't even know the names of. During the afternoon, Leah decided she needed to give the babies names. She couldn't keep calling them my little ones or angels forever. And besides, giving them names made them even more real, even more hers. She chose names she had always liked and thought suited their serene little faces. Lucas for the one who seemed to be slightly bigger, and Leo for the other one, who had a tiny birthmark on his forehead that made him even more special. "Lucas and Leo," she repeated aloud, testing how it sounded. "My boys, Lucas and Leo." The words came out naturally, as if she had been their mother for a long time, and she felt such a strong emotion that tears began to run down her face without her even noticing. The night brought new challenges. The babies would wake up every 2 hours, alternating between hunger, a dirty diaper, or simply the need to feel that they weren't alone. Leah created a routine where she slept on the living room sofa, with the 2 improvised cribs, made from large drawers lined with soft blankets, right next to her. Every time one of them cried, she would wake up immediately, as if she had developed a maternal sixth sense overnight. It was tiring, exhausting, but at the same time, it was the most rewarding thing she had ever done in her life. When she rocked the 2 of them in her arms, singing lullabies she remembered from her own childhood, she felt as if she had finally found her purpose, as if all the love she had saved in her heart for 20 years finally had a definite destination. On the 3rd day, Leah began to face the practical reality of the situation. The money was running out quickly with all the necessary purchases for the babies, and she knew she would need to go back to work soon. But how could she leave Lucas and Leo alone? How could she entrust their care to someone else when she herself could barely be away for 5 minutes to take a shower? The worry consumed her, but at the same time, she was determined to find a solution. "We'll figure it out," she said to the babies who were looking at her with those curious little eyes that were already starting to focus better. "Mommy will take care of you, no matter what." The word mommy came out naturally without her even planning it, and when she realized what she had said, she felt her heart fill with a joy mixed with fear. She was getting more and more attached. She was becoming the mother of those babies that destiny had placed in her path, and even though she knew this situation was temporary, she couldn't imagine her life without them. A desperate search in a powerful office in the business center of Springfield, Ethan Montenegro was living his worst nightmare. At 28, he had built an empire in the tech field, commanded a company with hundreds of employees, and was known for his coldness and determination in business. But nothing, absolutely nothing, he had faced in the corporate world, compared to the desperation he felt at that moment. His twin sons, Lucas and Leo, just 6 months old, had been missing for 3 days, and every minute that passed was a torture that corroded his soul. Ethan was a man who had always had control over everything in his life, who solved problems with logic and strategy. But this time, he felt completely lost and helpless in a situation that was completely out of his control. The twins' story was complicated and painful. They were the result of a relationship Ethan had with Chloe, a woman he met during a business trip. She had gotten pregnant, but from the beginning, she made it clear that she didn't want to be a mother, that motherhood was not part of her plans. Ethan tried to convince her that they could make it work, that he would take full responsibility, but Chloe was unyielding. She carried the pregnancy to term only because Ethan begged her, but the moment the babies were born, she simply disappeared from the hospital in the middle of the night, leaving only a note saying she couldn't be a mother and that Ethan would have to raise the children alone. Since then, he had been facing the challenge of being a single father to twins, hiring nannies, and trying to balance fatherhood with his company responsibilities. The nanny who took care of the twins was a 50-year-old woman named Carla, whom Ethan had hired through a reputable agency. She seemed competent and affectionate, and for the first few months, everything worked perfectly. Ethan could work knowing that his children were in good hands, and Carla seemed to genuinely like the children. But last Tuesday, when Ethan got home after a meeting that ran late, he found the house empty. There was no sign of Carla or the babies. No note, no explanation. Nothing. The children's room was messy as if someone had left in a hurry, and some of Carla's clothes and personal items had also disappeared. That's when the desperation really took over. Ethan immediately activated all the resources he had at his disposal. He hired private investigators, offered a reward of $100,000 for anyone who brought information about his children's whereabouts, and put up posters with the babies' photos all over the city. He also reported the disappearance to the police, but the detectives explained that cases involving nannies who disappear with children were complicated, especially since Carla had no criminal record and was technically authorized to leave with the babies. "She'll probably get in touch asking for money," the detective said, trying to reassure him. "These cases usually get resolved in a few days." But Ethan couldn't accept that possibility. The idea that someone might be using his children for extortion drove him crazy with worry and anger. For 3 days, Ethan couldn't sleep, eat properly, or concentrate on anything but finding Lucas and Leo. He searched hospitals, police stations, shelters, anywhere he could find a clue about the baby's whereabouts. His employees at the company were worried because they had never seen their boss in such a state of desperation. But Ethan couldn't think of anything else. "I failed them," he repeated to himself during the sleepless nights. "I couldn't protect my own children." Guilt consumed him as much as worry, because he wondered if he should have investigated the nanny better, if he should have noticed some sign that something was wrong. On Thursday night, one of the private investigators Ethan had hired called with the first concrete clues. "Mr. Montenegro, we've got some information on Carla. We found out she has serious financial problems, owes money to loan sharks, and has worked with fake documents in other homes. We're tracking the places she might have gone." Ethan felt a mixture of relief at finally having a direction and terror at imagining what kind of dangerous people might be involved in the situation. "Do whatever it takes," he said, his voice firm but trembling inside. "I'll pay any amount. I'll do anything. But I want my children back." On Friday morning, the investigator called again with news that made Ethan's heart pound. "We found Carla. She's in the city's public hospital, unconscious, a victim of an overdose. But Mr. Montenegro, the children are not with her. The doctor said she arrived alone on Wednesday night." Ethan felt like the world had collapsed around him. If Carla had been in the hospital for 2 days and the babies weren't with her, where could they be? Who was taking care of them? Were they hungry, cold, scared? The possibility that his children might be abandoned somewhere made Ethan run out of his office and go straight to the hospital, determined to make Carla talk, even if she was unconscious. At the hospital, Ethan got authorization to stay by Carla's bedside, waiting for her to wake up. He spent hours looking at the woman who had put his children's lives at risk, feeling a mixture of anger and despair. When she finally opened her eyes on Friday afternoon, Ethan approached the bed, his heart pounding. "Where are my children?" he asked in a controlled voice, but his eyes full of anguish. Carla looked at him in confusion, still under the influence of the drugs, and took a few seconds to process the question. I left them in a safe place," she murmured with difficulty. "In a box, near a bookstore, downtown. heartfelt pages. Ethan felt his blood run cold. In a box? What day? What time? Carla closed her eyes, clearly fighting to stay conscious. Wednesday night. I was scared of the loan sharks. I couldn't keep them. Ethan left the hospital like a madman, his heart racing and his hands trembling as he dialed the private investigator. Heartfelt Pages Bookstore, downtown Springfield. That's where you have to go now, he yelled into the phone, already running toward his car. The information Carla had given was vague and desperate. His children had been abandoned in a box near a bookstore on Wednesday night, and it was now Saturday. 3 days. 3 whole days that his babies could have been alone. Hungry, cold, or worse. Ethan drove through the streets of Springfield like he had never driven before, running yellow lights, honking at slower cars, with only one thought hammering in his head. Please let them be alive. Please let someone have found them. When he got to the area of the bookstore, Ethan found the team of investigators already searching the whole area. They looked in the alley next to the establishment, in the nearby trash cans. They asked all the shopkeepers in the vicinity, but they found no sign of the babies or the box Carla had mentioned. Mr. Montenegro, the lead investigator said, if the children were really left here on Wednesday night, it's very likely that someone found them. We're going to start questioning all the people who work or live in this area. Ethan nodded, trying to keep hope alive. But the desperation was growing with every minute that passed. The idea that his children might have been found by a stranger was both comforting and terrifying. The investigator first talked to the owner of the bakery on the corner, who said she had heard a baby crying on Thursday morning, but thought it was from a nearby apartment. Then he spoke with the lady at the flower shop, who commented that she had seen a young girl passing by in a hurry on Thursday, carrying a box, but she hadn't paid much attention. It was the girl from the bookstore, the florist said. Leah. She always passes by here at the end of her shift, but that day she looked different and seemed nervous, carrying something heavy. Ethan's heart almost stopped when he heard those words. Leah, the bookstore employee. Was it possible that she had found his children? Ethan practically flew to the bookstore door, but he found everything closed because it was already late on Saturday. Where does she live? He asked the florist desperately. I don't know the exact address, but it's on that street, the lady replied, pointing in a direction. In a small 3-story building, she always says she lives very close to here. Ethan quickly thanked her and ran in the indicated direction, followed by the investigators. His heart was beating so hard that he could hear the sound of his own pulse in his ears. They went from building to building, asking doormen and residents about a young woman named Leah who worked at the bookstore. In the 3rd building, an elderly lady who was watering plants at the entrance said, "Oh, Leah! She lives on the 2nd floor, apartment 23. Such a sweet girl. She always says hello when she passes by." Ethan went up the stairs 2 steps at a time, with the investigator right behind him. When he got to the door of apartment 23, he stopped for a moment, trying to control his breathing and prepare for what he might find. Were his children there? Were they okay? Were they alive? Ethan knocked on the door hard, and after a few seconds, he heard footsteps approaching. "Who is it?" a soft female voice asked. "I need to speak with Ms. Leah. It's about 2 babies who were found this week," Ethan replied, trying to keep his voice steady despite the desperation. There was a long silence from the other side of the door, and then it opened slowly. Ethan found himself in front of a 20-year-old young woman with brown hair and eyes that immediately revealed guilt and fear. But it was what he heard from inside the apartment that made his legs almost give way. The low whimper of babies. "The babies, they're here?" Ethan asked, his voice choked with emotion. Leah looked at him with tears in her eyes and nodded slowly. I found them abandoned in a box They were very cold, crying. Ethan couldn't contain his emotion, and tears began to stream down his face. "They're my children," he said, his voice broken. "Someone took them and abandoned them. I've been looking for them for 3 days." Leah put her hand to her mouth in shock and stepped back from the door to let him in. When Ethan entered the apartment, the first thing he saw were 2 improvised cribs in the living room, made from drawers lined with soft blankets. Lucas and Leo were there, dressed in clean little clothes that were clearly not theirs, drinking from baby bottles. Seeing the faces of his children, healthy and seemingly well cared for, Ethan fell to his knees on the floor and began to sob. "Lucas, Leo," he murmured, extending his trembling hands toward the babies. It was a moment of such intense relief that he couldn't stop crying. Leah was standing nearby, watching the scene with her eyes full of tears. "I didn't know. I swear I didn't know that someone was looking for them," she said in a low, emotional voice. "When I found them, they were abandoned, alone, cold. I couldn't leave them there." Ethan looked up at her, and for the first time, he really saw her. He saw how the apartment was organized to care for the babies, how there were clean diapers, sterilized bottles, and small clothes drying on a clothesline. He saw how she had deep, dark circles under her eyes. She had clearly not slept properly for days, but the babies were clean, fed, and cared for, with love. You took care of them?" Ethan said, still on his knees, looking at Leah with a mixture of gratitude and admiration. "You saved them." Leah wiped her tears and nodded. "I did what anyone would do. They're so small, so helpless. I couldn't imagine leaving them alone." At that moment, Ethan realized something that deeply touched him. This young stranger had cared for his children with more love and dedication than the nanny he had hired. She had sacrificed her money, her sleep, her routine, everything to ensure that Lucas and Leo were safe and comfortable. The unexpected proposal. Ethan stood for a few minutes just watching the scene. His children were calm in the arms of a stranger who treated them with such gentleness, who seemed like a real mother. Leah held Lucas while he drank, making small rocking motions and murmuring affectionate words. On the other side, Leo slept peacefully in his improvised crib, his little face serene, like someone who felt protected and loved. It was a sight Ethan had never imagined he would see, and it stirred something very deep inside him. For 3 days, he had imagined the worst possible scenarios, and now he found his children not only alive and healthy, but clearly well cared for by someone who showed a genuine love for them. "I need to give you the reward money," Ethan said, still emotional, taking his wallet out of his pocket. "I offered $100,000 to anyone who brought information about my children. You saved them. You took care of them. You deserve much more than that." Leah looked at him with an expression of genuine surprise and shook her head immediately. "No, you don't have to. I didn't do it for money," she replied firmly, still rocking Lucas. "I did it because they needed help. Anyone with a heart would do the same." Ethan stopped fumbling with his wallet and looked at her with even more admiration. He was used to a world where everything had a price, where people did favors expecting something in return. But here was a young woman who had sacrificed everything for 2 unknown babies, expecting nothing but the satisfaction of having done the right thing. Ethan looked more closely at the apartment and noticed the details that revealed how much Leah had dedicated herself to the care of the twins. There was a clear routine established, feeding times written on a piece of paper stuck to the refrigerator, clean diapers organized in a drawer, and small clothes that she had clearly bought especially for them. The apartment smelled of baby powder and milk, the smells of well-cared-for babies. "You created a whole system for them," Ethan said, impressed. "You didn't even know if someone would come looking for them, but you did all this anyway." Leah blushed slightly and looked down. I couldn't treat them as if they were temporary, she admitted. From the very first moment, they became special to me. Leah's confession touched Ethan in an unexpected way. He could see in her gestures, in the way she held the babies, in the way she talked to them, that it wasn't just a matter of obligation or pity. It was real love, a maternal love that had sprouted naturally from her heart. "You love them?" Ethan said. And it wasn't a question. It was an observation. Leah looked at Lucas in her arms, and then at Leo sleeping, and nodded with tears in her eyes. "I know it's strange. I know they're not biologically mine. But yes, I love them as if they were my own children." The raw honesty of that confession made Ethan feel a mixture of emotions that he couldn't completely process. Ethan picked Leo up and felt how the baby immediately snuggled against his chest, recognizing his father's smell. But at the same time, he watched how Lucas remained calm in Leah's arms, as if that was the natural place for him to be. "They got used to you," Ethan said, observing the obvious connection between Leah and the children. "In just 3 days, you became their mother." Leah smiled through her tears. "They are too special. From the first night, when I managed to make them stop crying and sleep peacefully, I knew I had been chosen to take care of them, at least for a while." It was at that moment that an idea began to form in Ethan's mind. Seeing how well his children were, how they had formed a real bond with Leah, how she showed a love and care that he had never seen, not even in the children's biological mother, he began to think of a possibility that was both logical and completely crazy. "Leah," he said, putting Leo back in the crib and turning to face her, "I have a proposal for you. But first, you need to know about my situation." Leah looked at him with curiosity and attention, still rocking Lucas gently. Ethan told her about Chloe, about how the baby's mother had abandoned them at the hospital, about his difficulties in finding trustworthy nannies, and about how he was afraid to leave his children with strangers after what had happened with Carla. "I work a lot. I have a big company to run, but my children are the most important thing in my life," he explained with sincerity. "I need someone to take care of them, someone I can trust completely, someone who genuinely loves them." Leah listened intently, already guessing where he was going, but not daring to believe the possibility. "I want you to be my children's official nanny," Ethan said, and the words came out faster than he had planned. "Not just an employee, but someone who is part of their lives, who helps them grow, who is a constant and loving presence. I can pay a very good salary. You would have your own room in my house. Total freedom to take care of them however you see fit." Leah was silent for a long moment, processing the proposal. It was exactly what her heart wanted, to continue caring for Lucas and Leo. But at the same time, it seemed too surreal to be true. "I accept," Leah said, without hesitation, and then quickly corrected herself. "I mean, if you really trust me. I know you don't know me, that to you, I'm a stranger, but I swear I'll take care of them as if they were my own children." Ethan smiled for the first time in days. "Leah, you've already proven that you're exactly the kind of person I needed to find. You saved my children, took care of them with love when they were abandoned, and didn't want money for the reward. If that's not enough proof of who you are, then I don't know what would be." But Ethan had a condition that he needed to make clear. "There's just one thing I need to ask," he said, becoming more serious. "I need you to come and live in my house. I can't take the risk of being away from my children again. And besides, taking care of twins is a full-time job. You would have your privacy and your own space, but you would need to always be nearby." Leah looked around her small apartment, thinking about how her life was about to change completely. She was going to leave her familiar little world, her independence, her simple life, to enter a completely different universe. But when she looked at Lucas in her arms and at Leo sleeping peacefully, she knew there was no choice to be made. I'll do it," she said with determination. "I will take care of your children the way they deserve to be cared for." A new home. The next morning, Leah was standing in front of Ethan's mansion, holding a small suitcase with her few clothes, and watching in disbelief the place where she would be living from that day on. The house was immense, with perfectly manicured gardens, an entrance with elegant columns, and huge windows that reflected the sunlight. It was a world completely different from her small, simple apartment, and she felt as if she were entering a dream, or maybe a movie. Ethan appeared at the door carrying Lucas, and the smile he gave her when he saw her made her feel a little more at ease. "Welcome to your new home," he said, and there was a sincerity in his voice that reassured her. Leah went up the entrance steps, still half in disbelief that this was really happening. The interior of the house was even more impressive than the exterior. There was elegant furniture, paintings on the walls, soft rugs, and everything was impeccably organized. Ethan guided her through the main living room, pointing out different rooms: the spacious kitchen, the dining room, the office where he worked when he was at home. "And this will be the children's room," he said, opening a door that revealed a room that left Leah speechless. It was a large room with 2 light wood cribs, colorful furniture, a comfortable armchair for feeding, and everything you could imagine for caring for babies. "I had everything set up last night," Ethan explained. "I wanted it to be perfect for when you arrived." The room Ethan had prepared for Leah was connected to the children's room by an internal door, so she could hear them at night. It was a cozy room with a large bed, a spacious closet, a desk near the window, and even a small bookshelf where she could put her favorite books. "You can decorate it however you want. Change anything you don't like," Ethan said, observing the admiring expression on her face. "I want you to feel at home here." Leah put her suitcase on the bed and looked around, still trying to process the reality. A few hours earlier, she was in her small apartment, and now she had a room bigger than her entire old house. During the first few days in the mansion, Leah and Ethan established a careful routine of cohabitation. He would leave for work in the morning after having breakfast and spending some time with the babies, and would return in the late afternoon. During the day, Leah would take care of Lucas and Leo alone, and quickly realized how different it was to take care of them in an environment with all the necessary resources. She had a complete kitchen to prepare the baby bottles, a laundry room to keep their clothes always clean, a garden where she could take the babies to get some sun, and even a special bathtub for them. It was a luxury she had never imagined, but at the same time, she felt that the babies deserved all that comfort. What most caught Leah's attention was watching Ethan when he came home from work. During the day, from the phone calls she sometimes overheard, he was a firm executive who made quick decisions and spoke with authority. But the moment he walked into the house and saw his children, he transformed into a completely different person. His face would light up, his voice would become soft, and he would sit on the floor to play with Lucas and Leo as if it were the best part of his day. "Hi, my princes," he would murmur, stroking their little faces. "Daddy missed you all day." It was such a beautiful transformation to see that Leah would often find herself watching from a distance, amazed by that display of paternal love. One night, when the babies were particularly fussy and couldn't sleep, Ethan and Leah ended up staying together in the children's room, each one rocking a baby and talking softly so as not to wake the one who managed to fall asleep first. "You have a special way with them," Ethan said, watching how Lucas calmed down when Leah sang softly. "It's as if you instinctively know what they need." Leah smiled shyly. "I think it's because I really care about them. When you truly love, you can notice the small things." Ethan was silent for a moment, watching her rock Lucas with soft, natural movements. "Can I ask you a personal question?" Ethan said after a while, still speaking softly so as not to wake Leo, who had finally fallen asleep in his arms. Leah nodded. "Have you always wanted to have children?" The question caught her by surprise, and she took a while to answer. "I always dreamed of having a family," she admitted. "I lost my parents when I was young, and since then, I've felt as if I'm looking for a place where I truly belong. When I found Lucas and Leo that night, it was as if a part of me that was asleep had woken up." Ethan watched her as she spoke, noticing the deep sincerity in her words. "And you?" Leah asked, curious. "Did you always want to be a father?" Ethan sighed, looking at Leo sleeping peacefully in his arms. "Honestly, no. I was so focused on the company, on business, that I never stopped to think about a family. When Chloe told me she was pregnant, my first instinct was panic. But the moment they were born," he stopped, emotional. "The moment I saw their little faces, I knew they were the most important thing that was going to happen in my life. All the professional success, all the money, none of that matters compared to being their father." During these nightly conversations, Leah began to get to know the Ethan behind the mask of the successful executive. She discovered that he had grown up in a wealthy but distant family, where displays of affection were rare, and that this had made him a closed-off, controlled person. "I don't want Lucas and Leo to grow up like I grew up," he confessed on one of those nights. "I want them to know they are loved, that they are a priority in my life, that they can always count on me." Leah was touched by that vulnerability he rarely showed, and began to understand why he had become so protective of his children. Ethan, in turn, began to admire more and more the naturalness with which Leah cared for the babies. She had infinite patience with them, could calm them when they were crying, and knew exactly when they were hungry, sleepy, or needed affection. More than that, she treated Lucas and Leo as if they were truly her children, with an unconditional love that was evident in every gesture. "You were born to be a mother," he said on one of those nights, and he saw how her eyes sparkled at the statement. It was true. Leah had a natural gift for motherhood that went far beyond technique or experience. As the days passed, Ethan began to realize that he was eagerly waiting for the moments at home, not just to see his children, but also to talk with Leah, to observe how she interacted with the children, to share with her the small discoveries of the day about Lucas and Leo. She always had some new thing to tell him. "Lucas held my finger today and wouldn't let go." Or, "Leo smiled when I sang that song you like." These conversations became his favorite part of the day, and he began to realize that Leah was becoming much more than just a nanny. She was becoming a fundamental part of the family he was building, a confession of love. After 3 weeks of living in the same house, the routine between Ethan and Leah had become natural and harmonious. They developed a perfect partnership in the care of Lucas and Leo, where each one knew exactly their role, but at the same time supported each other whenever necessary. Ethan began to get home from work earlier, making excuses to his employees about meetings that could be postponed or reports that could wait until the next day. The truth was that he was eager to get back home, to participate in the special moments with his children, and also to be close to Leah, who was becoming an increasingly important presence in his life. One Friday afternoon, Ethan got home and found a scene that made his heart race in a completely unexpected way. Leah was sitting in the garden, under the shade of the big tree, with Lucas and Leo lying on a colorful blanket beside her. She was reading a book out loud to them, doing different voices for each character, and the babies seemed mesmerized by her melodic voice. The afternoon sun created a golden halo around her, and Ethan stood at the window, observing that scene for several minutes, feeling something stir in his chest in a way he couldn't name. It was a feeling of completeness, of peace, of having finally found something he didn't even know he was looking for. "You're home early today," Leah said, when she noticed Ethan approaching. and the smile she gave him made him feel that strange sensation in his chest again. "I wanted to spend more time with you guys," he replied, sitting on the blanket next to her and picking up Leo. "What are you reading?" Leah showed him the book cover, a children's story about a family of animals who always helped each other. "I know they're still too small to understand, but I like to think that our voice calms them, that somehow they feel the affection we put into the words." Ethan watched as Lucas stretched his little hands toward the book, as if he wanted to touch the colorful pages, and he smiled. That night, after they put the babies to sleep, Ethan and Leah sat on the house's balcony to have a cup of tea, as had become their custom in recent days. It was Ethan's favorite time, when they could talk quietly about everything and nothing. When she would tell stories from her childhood, or talk about the books she was reading. When he would share his worries about the company, or his plans for his children's future. "Leah," he said that night, watching how she held her teacup with both hands to warm herself. "I want you to know that you've completely changed our lives, not just as a nanny, but as a person. Lucas and Leo are happier, more peaceful, and I am too." Leah looked at him with curiosity, noticing something different in his voice. "What do you mean?" Ethan took a moment to answer, as if he was organizing his thoughts. "Before you arrived, our house was just a place where I slept, and the babies were cared for. Now it has become a real home. It has laughter, it has stories, it has affection in every corner. You brought something special to our family." Leah's heart raced at those words, because she felt the exact same way. For the first time in her life, she felt part of something bigger, part of a true family. "Ethan," she said softly, "I also need to thank you. You gave me the opportunity to take care of Lucas and Leo, to be a part of their lives. I always dreamed of having a family, and even though I know this is temporary, that one day you'll find someone special and I'll have to." She stopped talking, because the idea of leaving that house, of separating from the babies and from Ethan, was too painful to put into words. Ethan noticed the sadness in her eyes, and felt the urge to tell her that she would never have to leave, that he could no longer imagine his life without her. But the words got stuck in his throat. Over the next few weeks, the connection between Ethan and Leah deepened in subtle but significant ways. They began to share more household responsibilities, cooking together on weekends, watching movies after the babies were asleep, talking about books and dreams late into the night. Ethan discovered that Leah had a natural wisdom about life, a way of seeing things that made him reflect on his own priorities and values. She helped him understand that professional success meant nothing if he didn't have special people to share it with, and that the simple moments with family were more valuable than any financial achievement. Leah, in turn, began to admire Ethan's dedication as a father and as a man. She saw how he strove to balance the demands of the company with family time, how he was always willing to get up in the middle of the night when the babies cried, and how he planned every detail to ensure that Lucas and Leo had everything they needed. More than that, she realized how Ethan was becoming a more open and an affectionate person, as if fatherhood had awakened a side of him that had been dormant for a long time. In the intimate conversations they shared, she discovered a sensitive, intelligent, and deeply loving man behind the facade of the successful executive. One night, when the babies had a slight cold and needed extra attention, Ethan and Leah spent the entire night awake, taking turns to make compresses, give medicine, and calm the little ones crying. Around 4 a.m, when they finally managed to get Lucas and Leo to sleep, they met in the kitchen, exhausted, preparing a coffee to get through the rest of the night. "Thank you," Ethan said, watching how Leah's hair was messy, and she had deep, dark circles under her eyes, but was still beautiful in his eyes. "Thank you for taking care of them, as if they were your own children." They are my children, Leah replied without thinking, and then she blushed deeply when she realized what she had said. I mean, I know they're not biologically mine, but in my heart? Ethan approached her and held her hand softly. Leah, they are your children, yes. You are more of a mother to them than anyone could ever be. You love them. You take care of them. You dedicate yourself completely to them. That's what makes a true mother. Tears began to run down her face, and Ethan felt the urge to wipe them away, to hug her, to tell her that she was the most special person he had ever met. It was at that moment, in the silent kitchen in the middle of the night, with the two of them exhausted but united by their love for the babies, that Ethan finally admitted to himself what he had been feeling for weeks. He was falling in love with Leah. It wasn't just gratitude for the care she gave his children, or admiration for the kind person she was. It was true, deep love, the kind he had never felt before. Leah, in turn, also began to realize that her feelings for Ethan went far beyond gratitude or partnership in caring for the children. She admired his dedication as a father, his intelligence, his ability to be strong when necessary, but also vulnerable when the situation called for it. More than that, she felt complete when she was with him, as if she had finally found the place where she belonged. When he came home from work and smiled when he saw her, when they shared stories about their day during dinner, when they worked together to take care of the babies, she felt that she was living exactly the life she had always dreamed of. But both of them kept these feelings to themselves, each one thinking that the other saw the relationship as just a professional partnership. Ethan thought that a young woman like Leah would never be interested in a man who was 8 years older, with 2 children and a complicated life. Leah thought that a successful man like Ethan would never look at her as anything more than an employee, no matter how special she was in the care of his children. So, they continued their delicate dance of closeness and distance, each one keeping in their heart a love that grew every day, but that neither of them dared to confess. A proposal and a new beginning. It was an especially quiet Saturday night, and Ethan had decided not to work at all during the weekend, to dedicate himself completely to his family. After a full day of playing with Lucas and Leo in the garden, having a nice barbecue in the backyard, and enjoying every moment together, everyone was relaxed and happy. The babies had eaten well, bathed calmly, and now Leah was putting them to sleep while singing a lullaby that her mother used to sing to her when she was little. Ethan was leaning against the bedroom door, watching that scene that was repeated every night, but that always moved him as if it were the first time he had witnessed it. Sleep, my little angel. Mommy is here. Sleep peacefully. You are safe, my love. Leah sang with a soft voice, stroking the hair of Lucas and Leo alternately. The baby's eyes were heavy with sleep, but they seemed to fight against exhaustion just to continue listening to that melodic voice that calmed them and made them feel protected. Ethan watched as Leah leaned down to kiss each of their foreheads, as she whispered words of affection, as she carefully arranged the blankets with maternal care. It was such a pure and true display of love that it made his heart ache with emotion. When Leah finally managed to get the two of them to sleep and turned to leave the room, she found Ethan still at the door, looking at her with an expression she couldn't completely decipher. There was something different in his eyes, an intensity that made her heart race. "Did they fall asleep?" he asked quietly, but without taking his eyes off her face. "Yes, finally," Leah replied, also speaking in a whisper. "I think the day in the garden tired them out quite a bit." They left the room together, closing the door softly, but the atmosphere between them was charged with something new, something that neither of them could name, but that they both clearly felt. "Do you want to have a glass of wine on the balcony?" Ethan asked when they got to the living room. It was something they had never done before. They always had tea or coffee, always maintained a certain formality, even in the most intimate moments of conversation. But on that night, there was something in the air that called for a break in the routine, a different kind of closeness. Leah felt it, feeling a mix of nervousness and anticipation that she couldn't explain. Ethan went to the wine cellar and chose a special bottle, one he had been saving for important occasions, without knowing exactly why that night felt so important. On the balcony, under the soft light of the stars, and with the quiet sound of crickets in the garden, they sat on the swing that Ethan had installed a few weeks earlier. It was a large, comfortable piece of furniture, where they could both fit without having to be too close, but close enough to feel each other's presence. Ethan poured the wine into 2 glasses and offered one to Leah, watching how her hands trembled slightly when she took the glass. "Are you nervous?" he asked with a gentle smile. "A little," she admitted, blushing. "I don't know why, but tonight feels different." Ethan knew exactly what she meant, because he felt the same way. It was as if all the weeks of living together, all the shared moments, all the intimate conversations, and the shared care of the babies had built something between them that was reaching a point of no return. "Leah," he said, putting his glass down and turning to face her completely. "I need to tell you something, but I'm afraid it will change everything between us." Her heart pounded, and she also put her glass down, sensing that this was a decisive moment. "I've fallen in love with you," Ethan said, and the words came out faster than he had planned, as if they had a life of their own. "I know this complicates everything. I know you came here to take care of the boys, not to deal with a confused man's feelings, but I can no longer pretend that you're just my children's nanny." Leah was silent for a moment that felt like an eternity, looking into his eyes and seeing a vulnerability he rarely allowed himself to show. "You made me believe in love again," Ethan continued. "You made me see that it's possible to have a real family based on affection, respect, and partnership." "Ethan," Leah began, but he interrupted her softly. "I know it's crazy. We're from different worlds. You're young, you have your whole life ahead of you, and I have 2 children, a company, a lot of responsibilities. But when I see you taking care of the boys, when we talk late into the night, when I wake up in the morning and you're the first person I want to see, I know that what I feel is real. You're not just special to Lucas and Leo, you're special to me too." Ethan's words echoed in Leah's heart like a song she had always wanted to hear, but never dared to dream of. "I've also fallen in love with you," Leah said softly, and it was Julian's turn to be silent, barely believing what he had just heard. "Since the first few weeks here, I realized that what I felt went far beyond gratitude or admiration. You're an incredible father, a kind, intelligent man, and you make me feel like I've finally found my place in the world." Tears began to stream down her face. "I always dreamed of having a family, of loving someone truly, and being loved in return. And when I found you 3, when I saw how you take care of the boys, how you treat me with affection and respect, I knew I had found everything I had always been looking for." Ethan reached out and touched Leah's face softly, wiping away her tears with his thumb. "Are you sure?" he asked, because he needed to be absolutely sure that she wasn't confusing gratitude with love, that she wasn't feeling pressured by the situation. "I'm sure," she replied, placing her hand on his. "I love you, Ethan. I love your dedication to the boys. I love your intelligent conversations. I love how you make me feel special and important, and I love how the 3 of us form something beautiful together." It was at that moment that Ethan slowly leaned toward her, giving her time to pull away if she wanted to. But Leah just closed her eyes and tilted her face toward his. The first kiss was soft, delicate, full of all the emotions they had been holding back for weeks. It was a kiss that spoke of true love, of unspoken promises, of a future they were building together without even realizing it. When they parted, they were both breathing heavily, looking into each other's eyes, as if they were seeing for the first time. "I love you," Ethan said again, now with more certainty, holding her face in his hands. "I love you, Leah. And I want you to know that this is not because of the boys. It's not gratitude. It's not convenience. It's true love, the kind I've never felt before in my life." Leah smiled through her tears and kissed him again, this time with more intensity, letting all the pent-up feelings finally come to the surface. "I love you too," she murmured against his lips. "More than I ever imagined it was possible to love someone." They spent the rest of the night on the balcony, kissing softly, talking about the future, making plans that included the two of them and the children as a true family. Ethan talked about his dreams of giving his children the happy childhood he never had, of building a home full of love and laughter. Leah talked about how she had always imagined what it would be like to take care of her own children, how Lucas and Leo were already the children of her heart, and how she wanted to be by Ethan's side for all the important discoveries and milestones in the children's lives. When they finally decided to go inside, it was almost midnight, and they walked hand in hand to Leah's bedroom door. "Good night," Ethan said, giving her one last soft kiss on the lips. "Sleep well, my love." The words, "my love," made Leah's heart race again, and she smiled that way that only truly in-love people know how to smile. "Good night, Ethan. I love you." She walked into the room with her heart overflowing with happiness, knowing that her life had changed forever, that she had finally found the true love she had always looked for. Ethan went to his room with a smile he couldn't hide, feeling more complete and happy than he ever imagined was possible. That night, they both slept with their hearts full of love and hope, knowing that the future that awaited them would be built together, based on the true love they had discovered in each other, a forever kind of love. In the weeks that followed that special night on the balcony, Ethan and Leah experienced a magical period of discovery and closeness. The love they had confessed to each other was evident in the small gestures of everyday life. A good morning kiss when they met in the kitchen, hands that touched when they cared for the babies together, passionate looks they exchanged during dinner, and whispered conversations before they separated to sleep. It was as if the whole house had filled with a new, lighter, and happier energy that even Lucas and Leo seemed to feel, because they were more smiley and peaceful than ever. Ethan started working fewer hours, delegating more responsibilities to his trusted employees, because he wanted to take advantage of every possible moment with Leah and the children. He discovered that the business worked perfectly, even without his constant presence, and that the true wealth in his life was there, in that house that had become a real home. "You changed my perspective on everything," he said to Leah one Sunday afternoon, while they watched Lucas and Leo playing in the garden. "Before, I thought success was measured by numbers, by professional achievements. Now I know that success is this right here, having you by my side, watching our children grow up happy, having a family united by love." Leah felt like she was living a dream she never wanted to end. Every day with Ethan and the children made her feel more complete, more fulfilled as a woman and as a person. She woke up every morning with a smile on her face, eager to start another day taking care of the babies, talking with Ethan, and building together that family life she had always dreamed of. "Sometimes I have to pinch myself to make sure this is real," she confessed to Ethan one night, when they were lying on the sofa watching a movie after the boys had gone to sleep. "I always dreamed of having a family like this, but I never imagined it could be so perfect." It was on a Friday night, 2 months after they had confessed their feelings. that Ethan made a decision that had been maturing in his heart for weeks. He was absolutely sure that he wanted to spend the rest of his life with Leah, that he wanted to make official the family that already existed in all their hearts, that he wanted to give her the commitment and security she deserved. After they put Lucas and Leo to sleep, he told her he had a special surprise for her in the garden. Leah followed him, curious, not imagining what was waiting for her. The garden had been transformed into a romantic scene straight out of a movie. Ethan had scattered candles everywhere, creating a magical atmosphere under the starlight. In the center of the lawn, he had prepared a picnic with all her favorite foods, a bottle of the best champagne from his collection, and in the middle of it all, a small velvet box that made Leah's heart almost stop beating. "Ethan," she whispered, her hands on her chest, already with tears in her eyes. "What is all this?" He smiled, taking her hand and guiding her to the center of that enchanting setup. "Leah," Ethan began, and his voice was emotional but firm. "4 months ago, you came into our lives like an angel sent by destiny. You saved my children when they needed it most, brought love and joy to our home, and won my heart in a way I never imagined was possible." He knelt on the ground, taking the small velvet box, and Leah began to cry with emotion, barely believing that this moment was really happening. "You are the kindest, most affectionate, and most special woman I have ever met. You are the mother Lucas and Leo always deserved to have, and you are the love of my life. Will you marry me?" Ethan asked, opening the box and revealing a beautiful engagement ring with a diamond that shone in the candlelight. "Will you officially be my wife, the mother of my children, my partner for all of my life?" Leah was crying so much with happiness that she could barely breathe properly. This was the moment she had dreamed of since she was a little girl, the marriage proposal from the man she loved in a perfect night, surrounded by all the love they had built together. "Yes!" she cried, kneeling on the ground beside him. "Yes, I want to marry you. I want to be your wife, the mother of our children, your partner forever." Ethan put the ring on her finger with hands trembling with emotion, and then kissed her with all the passion and love he felt. It was a kiss full of promises, of commitments, of shared dreams. When they parted, they were both crying with happiness, hugging each other there in the middle of the candlelit garden, knowing that this was just the beginning of a lifetime together. "I love you so much," Ethan murmured against her hair. "You've made me the happiest man in the world." Leah looked at the ring on her finger, shining like a star, and smiled through her tears. "I love you too, more than words can express." They decided to get married in just a month, because they didn't want to wait any longer to make official what was already real in all their hearts. It would be an intimate ceremony, with only a few close people, because what mattered wasn't the party, but the commitment they were making to each other. Ethan insisted that Leah choose every detail of the wedding, from the dress to the flowers, because he wanted it to be exactly the way she had always dreamed. "You deserve to have the wedding of your dreams," he said, "because you are the bride of my dreams." The wedding day arrived on a sunny Saturday morning. The ceremony would be in the garden of their own home, decorated with white flowers and delicate arrangements that transformed the space into a fairy tale setting. Leah was in the bedroom getting ready, wearing a simple but elegant dress that enhanced her natural beauty, when Ms. Miller, her old customer from the bookstore who had become a dear friend, appeared to help her with the final details. "You are radiant, my dear," the elderly woman said, lovingly arranging Leah's veil. "I always knew that destiny had something special in store for you." Ethan was in the garden, impeccable in a dark suit, holding Lucas while Leo slept peacefully in the stroller next to the improvised altar. He couldn't stop smiling, anxious to see Leah walking in, dressed as a bride, to say the vows he had prepared with so much care, to finally make official the family they had built with so much love. when the music began to play, and Leah appeared at the door of the house, walking slowly through the garden toward him. Ethan felt his eyes fill with tears. She was absolutely stunning, radiating happiness and love. The ceremony was simple, but deeply moving. They exchanged vows they had written for each other, promising eternal love, companionship, and dedication to the family they were forming together. "Leah," Ethan said, looking into her eyes as he held her hands. "You brought light into my life when I didn't even know I was in the dark. I promise to love you, protect you, and cherish you every day of my life. I promise to be the best husband and father I can be, and to build with you a family based on love, respect, and happiness." Leah was crying with emotion, but managed to speak her vows with a firm and affectionate voice. "Ethan, you gave me everything I ever dreamed of. A family, a home, a true love. I promise to love you unconditionally, to care for our children with all my heart, and to be your faithful companion in all the joys and challenges that life brings." When the officiant declared them husband and wife, Ethan kissed Leah with tenderness, and at that moment, they both knew that they were starting a new phase of their lives, officially united not only by love, but also by the sacred commitment of marriage. The guests applauded emotionally. Lucas babbled something that sounded like approval, and even Leo woke up at just the right time to witness the moment his parents made official the love that had existed for so long. The party was small, but full of joy, with soft music, delicious food, and lots of affectionate conversations about the new family's future. Ethan and Leah could barely stop looking at each other, touching each other, and smiling at each other. It was as if they were living a waking dream, a dream they had built together with patience, love, and dedication. When night came and the last guests had left, they put Lucas and Leo to sleep together as an official family at last. Then came the moment they had both been waiting for, with a mixture of anxiety and desire. Their first night together as husband and wife. Leah was nervous because she was a virgin and had never given herself to anyone. But at the same time, she was anxious to live that experience with the man she loved more than anything in life. Ethan was equally nervous because he knew of her inexperience and wanted that moment to be perfect, full of love and affection, a beautiful memory she would cherish forever. In the room that was now officially theirs, Ethan had prepared a romantic setting with soft candles and rose petals scattered on the bed. When Leah entered, still in her wedding dress, he looked at her with so much love that she felt like the most desired and special woman in the world. "Are you sure?" he asked softly, holding her face in his hands. "We don't have to rush. We have a whole lifetime ahead of us." Leah smiled and kissed him with tenderness. "I'm sure. I want to give myself completely to you. I want you to be the first and only man in my life." Ethan kissed her slowly, with infinite delicacy, and began to undress her with care, as if he were unwrapping the most precious gift he had ever received. Every kiss, every caress, every whispered word of love was done with patience and affection, respecting her pace, ensuring she felt loved and protected. When they finally gave themselves completely to each other, it was a transformative experience for both of them. For Leah, it was the discovery of a pleasure and intimacy she didn't even know existed. For Ethan, it was the realization of loving someone with such intensity that every moment became sacred. They made love slowly, looking into each other's eyes, whispering words of affection, discovering each new sensation together. There was no rush, no urgency, just the desire to connect in the most intimate way possible, to physically seal the love that already existed in their hearts. When it was all over, they lay embraced in bed, covered only by the sheet and the soft candlelight, talking quietly about how complete, fulfilled, and deeply in love they felt. "Thank you for waiting for me," Leah whispered, lying on Ethan's chest, listening to his heartbeats. "Thank you for making this experience so special, so full of love." Ethan kissed her forehead with tenderness. "Thank you for choosing me, for trusting me, for giving yourself wholeheartedly. I promise I will love and protect you every day of our lives." And there, in that bed, in that room, in that house that had become their home, they fell asleep together for the first time as husband and wife, knowing that they had found in each other not just the love of their lives, but also the person they wanted to grow old with and build a happy family. The final twist of fate, the first months of Ethan and Leah's marriage, were a period of sweet and natural adjustment to their new family reality. Waking up every day knowing they were officially husband and wife brought a feeling of completeness that both were still learning to savor. The house's routine gained new rhythms and new habits. Breakfast together every morning, with Ethan helping to prepare the baby's bottles before leaving for work. Leah singing around the house while she cared for Lucas and Leo. And family dinners where they talked about their day, made plans for the future, and simply enjoyed the joy of being together. Lucas and Leo, who were now almost a year old, began to show distinct personalities that delighted their parents. Lucas was more observant and calm, liked to be held, while Leah read him stories, and had developed the adorable habit of stretching out his arms whenever he saw Ethan coming home from work. Leo was more energetic and curious, always trying to crawl to explore new corners of the house, and made a point of chatting in his own baby language during meals, as if he were telling them about his day's adventures. "They're so different from each other," Leah would observe during the boys' bath, "but they both have this natural joy that lights up the whole house." Ethan had made some important changes in the company to be able to dedicate more time to his family, hiring a trusted executive director to take care of the day-to-day operations, starting to work from home more on Fridays, and establishing an inflexible rule of not taking work calls after 7 in the evening and on weekends. "The company can survive a few hours without me," he would tell Leah. "But my children won't wait for me to be available to take their first steps or say their first words. Those things only happen once, and I don't want to miss a single special moment." One Thursday afternoon, while Ethan was working in his home office and Leah was taking care of the babies in the living room, something magical happened. Lucas, who was playing with colorful blocks on the rug, suddenly stood up on his own for the first time, holding on to the sofa. "Ethan!" Leah shouted excitedly. "Come quick! Lucas is standing up!" Ethan dropped everything he was doing and ran to the living room, arriving just in time to see Lucas taking his first wobbly steps toward the sofa where Leah was sitting. "My son!" Ethan exclaimed, his eyes full of tears of pride and emotion. "He's walking! Our boy is walking!" It was a moment they would both cherish forever, an important milestone they witnessed together as a family. Leo, not wanting to be left behind by his brother, also began to try and get up. And within a week, the two of them were crawling all over the house, exploring every corner with the natural curiosity of babies discovering the world. "Our house has become a playground," Leah laughed, watching how the twins had more fun with empty boxes than with the expensive toys Ethan insisted on buying. One night, after they managed to get the two of them to sleep after a particularly busy afternoon of playing, Ethan and Leah sat on the bed to talk about something that had been on both their minds for a few weeks. "Have you ever thought about having more children?" Ethan asked, playing with her hair as they lay next to each other. Leah smiled, because she had been thinking the exact same thing. "I always dreamed of having a big family," she admitted. "Seeing how special Lucas and Leo are, it would be wonderful to give them little brothers or sisters." Ethan kissed her forehead with affection. Then let's let it happen naturally. If it's meant to be, it will happen at the right time. Weekends became sacred moments for the family. Ethan and Leah created special traditions. Saturday mornings were for walks in the park with the boys, letting them explore nature, see other babies, and get used to the world outside the house. Sundays were for staying at home, cooking together, watching children's movies, and simply enjoying the tranquility of being all together. "I never imagined that happiness could be something so simple," Leah would say, watching Ethan on the living room floor, playing hide-and-seek with the twins. "Before, I thought I needed big events to be happy. Now I know that happiness is in these small, perfect moments." Ethan discovered a passion he didn't know he had: taking family photos. He bought a professional camera and began documenting every special moment of the boys, their first attempts at talking, the funny faces they made during meals, the naps they took curled up on the sofa, the baths full of laughter and foam. "I want them to have their entire childhood documented," he would explain to Leah. "I want them to be able to see in every photo how much they were loved when they grow up." The family album grew quickly, full of moments of pure joy and love. One morning, Leah woke up feeling different. There was a strange sensation in her stomach, a greater sensitivity to smells, and when she realized that her period was 2 weeks late, her heart raced. Could it be? She thought, looking at Ethan, who was still sleeping next to her. She decided to wait a few more days before telling him anything, but the possibility of being pregnant made her both anxious and excited. It would be wonderful to give Lucas and Leo little siblings, to expand even more that family that was already so special. During those days of anticipation, Leah would watch Ethan playing with the twins and imagine how he would react to the news that they might have another baby. She knew he would be the happiest father in the world, that he would embrace the idea of expanding the family with all the love in his heart. Ethan is a natural father, she would think, seeing how he had infinite patience with the boys' mischief, how he invented new games every day, and how he could calm any tantrum with just a smile and a loving hug. When she finally took the test and saw the positive result, Leah cried tears of joy. She was pregnant. She was going to give Lucas and Leo a little brother or sister. She was going to expand even more that family that had started so unexpectedly and was now the most precious thing in her life. She planned a special way to tell Ethan, preparing a romantic dinner after the boys had gone to sleep and leaving the pregnancy test wrapped as a gift in his place at the table. When Ethan got home from work that night and saw the table set in a special way, with candles lit and a small gift in his place, he was curious. "What are we celebrating?" he asked, hugging Leah from behind while she finished setting up dinner. "Open your gift first," she said, barely able to hide the emotion in her voice. Ethan opened the wrapping, and when he saw the pregnancy test with the positive result, he was silent for a few seconds, processing the information. Then he looked at Leah with eyes shining with joy. "You're pregnant?" he asked, and when she nodded, he picked her up and spun her around the kitchen, laughing and crying at the same time. "We're going to have another baby! Our family is going to grow!" That night they stayed up late, talking about the pregnancy, making plans for the new baby, and imagining how Lucas and Leo would react when they were old enough to understand that they were going to have a little brother or sister. "Our house is going to be even more full of love," Ethan said, with his hand on Leah's still flat stomach. "And our children will grow up knowing that they are part of a united family, where every child is wanted and loved even before they are born." Leah smiled, imagining how perfect it would be to see Ethan caring for another baby. How wonderful it would be to have a house full of children's laughter, and how complete the life they were building together was. 2 years after that encounter that changed everything, Ethan was sitting on the balcony, watching a scene that filled his heart with gratitude. Leah was playing in the garden with Lucas and Leo, who were now 2.5, while she rocked Mia, their 8-month-old daughter, who was born bringing even more joy to that family. The boys ran across the lawn, laughing loudly, while Leah sang softly to the baby, who slept peacefully in her arms. It was an image of perfection, of a dream come true, of love multiplied. Who would have thought that everything started on a cold night, with 2 babies abandoned in a box, Ethan thought, remembering how destiny works in mysterious ways. If Leah hadn't walked down that alley on that exact night, if she didn't have the kind heart that she has, if she hadn't chosen to save Lucas and Leo instead of just calling the authorities, none of this would exist. There would be no beautiful family, no love that grew every day, no complete happiness that he didn't even know was possible to feel. Ethan got up and walked to where his family was, picking up Leo while Lucas ran to hug his legs. "Daddy!" the boy shouted, and that simple word still made Ethan's heart fill with emotion. Leah looked at him with that smile that made him fall in love every day, and Ethan knew once again that he had been blessed in a way he didn't deserve, but for which he would be grateful for the rest of his life. "You know what I've discovered in these 2 years?" Ethan said, sitting on the lawn next to Leah and watching as Lucas tried to teach Leo how to play ball. "I discovered that kindness always comes back to those who practice it. You saved my children that night out of pure kindness, without expecting anything in return, and the universe gave you back an entire family, a true love, and a life full of purpose." Leah smiled, adjusting Mia in her arms. "And I discovered that when we act from the heart, following our intuition to do good, destiny conspires to make magical things happen." The story of how they met had already become a legend among friends and acquaintances. Ms. Miller, who continued to be a present figure in their lives, would always tell anyone who would listen about how her dear Leah had found the love of her life by saving 2 abandoned babies. "It's a movie story," she would say, her eyes shining with emotion. "Proof that there are still angels on earth and that true love exists for those with a pure heart." Lucas and Leo grew up knowing the story of how they came to that family. But to them, Leah was always simply Mommy, the person who loved them unconditionally, who took care of them when they were sick, who invented games, who read them stories before bed, and who comforted them when they cried. The bond between them was so natural and strong that no one who didn't know Leah's story would know that they weren't biologically mother and sons. "Love doesn't come from blood," Leah used to say. "Love comes from the heart, from dedication, from daily care, from the choice to be present in every important moment of a child's life." Ethan's company continued to grow and prosper, but now he had a completely different perspective on success. He used part of the profits to help institutions that cared for abandoned children, created a support program for single parents in vulnerable situations, and always hired employees who needed an opportunity to start their lives over. "Money only has value when it's used to do good," he would explain to his children, who were still too young to fully understand, but who would grow up knowing the importance of helping those in need. Leah went back to working with books, but now in a different way. She created a project where she visited hospitals, shelters, and public schools, telling stories to children who needed affection and attention. She would take a special selection of books with her and always ended her sessions with a message of hope. That no matter where they came from or what their current situation was, everyone had the right to dream of a better future. Everyone had value, and everyone deserved love. It was her way of giving back to the universe all the happiness she had received. The nights on the balcony continued to be a sacred ritual for Ethan and Leah. After they put the 3 children to bed, they would sit together to talk about their day. make plans for the future, or simply stay in silence, appreciating the tranquility and completeness of that life they had built together. "Sometimes I still don't believe all of this is real," Leah would confess, watching the stars in the sky. That the orphan girl who lived alone in a small apartment now has a beautiful family, a house full of love, 3 wonderful children, and a husband who truly loves her. And sometimes I don't believe that the cold and calculating man I was has transformed into this doting father and passionate husband," Ethan would reply, kissing her hand. "You taught me that true wealth isn't in what you own, but in what you love. You taught me that being vulnerable isn't weakness, it's courage. You taught me that a family doesn't have to be perfect to be happy. It just has to be united by true love." And there, on that balcony, in that house that had become the home of 5 people who loved each other deeply, they knew that they had found the true meaning of life, that all the pain of the past had been worth it, because it led them to that perfect moment. That love, when it's true and genuine, has the power to transform everything and create miracles that even the most fertile imagination can't predict. Dear listeners, the story of Leah and Ethan teaches us that kindness is always rewarded, that true love exists for those who have faith to wait for it, and that life's greatest blessings often arrive when we least expect them, disguised as challenges that test our hearts. If you've made it this far and were moved by this story, leave a like so more people can hear this message of hope. Subscribe to our Fio de Esperanza channel to not miss any of the next stories we tell. And in the comments, tell us, what was the part that moved you the most? Do you believe that destiny really exists? May God bless all of you. May true love come into the lives of everyone who follows us. And may you always have the courage to act with kindness, even when no one is watching. Until the next story. And remember, there is always a thread of hope connecting our hearts to the miracles that are yet to come.